Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at my custom unused Civil War suit Spider-Man figure. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright guys, so this particular figure requires a little bit of background. So this guy is the Civil War 3-pack Spider-Man. So if you have that figure, then you know that it's painted a little bit different. It's painted to look a little bit more like this guy. So what's going on here is this figure was sculpted to look like the unused Civil War suit. So on set, the practical suit that they had on some of the days looked more like this, apart from the fact that I left out the black web lines simply because I didn't want to give it a wash. I thought it would mute the colors a little bit too much, and I just never gotten around to painting them by hand because I just really like how it came out as is. And nowadays it's pretty common to see Marvel Legends not have the web lines, and I think this guy looks pretty good. So that's the reason it doesn't have the web lines. But other than that, the figure is painted pretty much perfectly to represent the unused Civil War suit. It's not supposed to look like this. So this is what Hasbro did, and if you actually look at some of the promotional artwork that they, or the promotional promotional pictures that they took for this figure early on, it looked more like this, and then later on it was changed to look more like this. Now this isn't the same figure, this is the Homecoming, but it was painted to look more like this. And I'm gonna give you guys some pictures. I'll throw them up here so that you guys can get a good idea what I'm talking about. The only thing that I actually replaced on the figure were the wrist pegs and the actual hands. These are from the Mafex Homecoming Spider-Man, because I figured that the original hands were a little bit too big and they threw off the proportions a bit too much. And the reason for that is his forearms don't really have a proper shape. They kind of look like tubes. They don't really have a smooth transition going down. It's thicker and then it goes thinner. And the fact that he has these chunky web shooters on there, it doesn't really help at all. So I kind of wanted to create an illusion here, and I think it came out pretty well, but it might be hard for somebody to understand what I'm talking about. I'm not quite sure, but I chose these hands because they're actually smaller than the style of hands that he came with, right? These kind of fisted hands, they're smaller, but they've got a wider gesture, right? His hands are wider open, so it gives the illusion that his hands are bigger than his wrists, but they're not actually oversized like the previous hands were. So I think that helps out the proportions a little bit. It makes his wrists look a little bit more in proportion, and his hands aren't overly big like they were before. So for me, it works out, it checks out. I think it looks better, but some other people might just not understand what I'm trying to say, and that's completely fine. However, this figure actually does share some sculpting pieces with this particular figure. The elbows, the forearms, the hands, and the lower legs are all from this original guy. And for an example here, you can see that this black line right here, let me zoom in. Well, this black line right here is painted. And now in the actual Homecoming suit, you can see that that's actually supposed to be a black band going from the inside of the arm down to the web shooter, right? This is just a painted web line. That comes from this figure, which they did do the same thing. It's not supposed to look like that, because this was sculpted to look like this. And you can see down here that the blue bands travel down right here to look like this. And then with this figure and this one, they kind of just, well, actually they didn't do it with this one, but they kind of just painted the back of this heel black for some reason. But you can see that that original sculpt is supposed to carry over this design. So Hasbro didn't completely redo the figure when they did it for the Homecoming movie. But I just think that the actual suit that was used on set is really, really good. I really like it. I like the Alex Ross style eyes. I like the Steve Ditko style spiders. I like the fact that there's not an over amount of black on the suit, aside from the thick webbing. But that doesn't really bother me, because at that point we didn't really see Spider-Man with black webbing on the suit. When Civil War came out, the only Spider-Man suit that had black webbing on it was the Amazing Spider-Man 1 suit. So that was a nice change. However, we didn't get to see it in the actual movie. The actual movie has flat black webbing, but it still works well enough. But the raised webbing, like the Raimi movies, we hadn't seen that black yet, or in black yet. But the colors of the suit, the overall look of the suit, I'm just a big fan of, and that's why I like this custom so much, is just because of that reason. I think the sculpt looks really good in terms of the shoulders and the waist. He's got a nice taper going on. He looks a lot more like a superhero, opposed from this guy. His shoulders bother me. His traps bother me. They come over too much. His waist doesn't have a good transition. He just looks really weird. His arms are really like straight, and it bothers me. And you can see that there's a hole in there, and these are the same elbows, and you don't really get that problem. This figure just bothers me a lot. Now, I like him because he's the only figure I have that has the web wings, so I can get him in some nice gliding poses. But in terms of standing up straight and down, this is the meat and potatoes right here, and that's why I don't really do much with him. I kind of just have him standing in this position just because I really like the way he looks. And speaking of moving him around, his paint rub isn't really an issue from what I've noticed so far. His shoulders or his elbows do well, his knees do well, and his ankles do well. His hips are fine as well. They work out pretty well. I would imagine you could damage it if you wanted to, but you see that the knees came out pretty well. The only part where I've really came across any sort of issues is the shoulder. You can see right here in the butterfly joints, there's a little bit of scraping on the inside of there, and I'm also afraid to move these shoulders because I do think the same will happen there just because they're so round. So the shoulders are definitely going to have a paint rub issue, and I just don't want to deal with it, so I'm not going to move them. But everywhere else seems to be fine. The ab crunch doesn't really run into anything, I don't think. At the very top we have it, but we don't really see that. So for the paint rub, it's definitely something I need to continue to work on. But for the most part, I really like how this guy came out. So that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like button, or hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And let me know what you guys think about this suit. I personally really like this suit. Not so much about the custom. If you like the custom, that's terrific. But the actual suit used on set, let me know how you feel about it. I'll throw up some pictures up here so you guys get a good idea of what I'm talking about. But I personally really like this suit, and I think it would have been cool to see in the actual movie. However, I can see why they didn't go with it. But, you know, I personally really enjoy it. So, with that being said, that's going to be it for this video. And until next time, true believers.